Why is it that Freemasonry has an unwritten rule that prohibits the discussion of religion and politics in lodge? Don't we ever get the feeling that we might be missing out on some enlightening conversations by avoiding these topics? Well, what if I told you that this rule, far from being a simple matter of avoiding conflict, is actually key to unlocking some of Freemasonry's most profound teachings? Now, if we don't understand the purpose behind this rule, we also risk eroding the very foundation that makes Freemasonry a unique and transformative brotherhood. But by understanding this, we'll gain a deeper appreciation for the wisdom of the ancient craft and really learn how this simple rule helps us become better men and Masons. So in this episode of Daily Masonic Progress, we're going to pull back the curtain on this age-old Masonic custom. We're going to explore the 3 critical aspects that every Mason needs to understand about religion and politics in lodge. We'll uncover the origins of why this rule exists and why it's considered an excellence of character, and I'll reveal how this rule relates to one of Freemasonry's core objectives and why it's more relevant now than ever before. But first, why are we even discussing this? Well, it's actually a question that came in from a curious brother who writes, "I've heard in some lodges there are 2 things Masons don't talk about, religion and politics. Is there a reason for this? It would make sense that these 2 things, though are touchy subjects, if discussed amicably, could lead to enlightening conversation." Now, this brother's question cuts right to the heart of a misunderstanding that many Masons, both new and experienced, often have about our craft, and reveals a crucial aspect of Freemasonry that, once we understand it, transforms the entire Masonic journey. So let's start with understanding where this rule comes from. And this is going to give us the foundation and better context as to why we actually abstain from religious and political discussion in lodge. In my jurisdiction's ritual, and also in the Taylor's ritual, this rule originates from part of a charge or a speech delivered at the end of the initiation ceremony. And the line is, "by abstaining from every topic of religious or political discussion." Now, in the charge, this phrase comes from a section that defines what the excellences of character of a Freemason are. And there are 3, the third being obedience. The rule to abstain from political or religious discussion forms part of the verse that explains what these things are, that we as Masons must be obedient to in order to have that excellence of character. It's giving us the exact standards of behavior to adhere to, while providing a strict definition of what excellent is. So to become a Freemason, you have to be a good man, but that's purely the entry requirements to get you in the door. You see, thereafter, once you're inside, you're expected to become an excellent man. So now we know the foundation of the rule. Why are still these discussions prohibited? Even if men of excellent character, we could have them amicably and respectfully. To better understand this, we need to wind back to an early part of the ceremony of initiation. But before I explain that, we have to consider what is happening in the profane world, or the day-to-day society that we all live in. Have you noticed that in today's socio-political landscape, identity politics is at the very core of everything that is happening? We now have to contend with multiple identities just to go and consume any news, and you'll see each piece creates a divide of identity. For example, gender pronouns. Today's society is divided, and its divisions are even further divided. And this dividing, well, we end up with a laundry list of identities in the modern and profane world, and it honestly feels like madness. But there is an antidote to all this division. It's one that Freemasonry has provided for centuries, and it's actually very simple and comes from the craft's core objectives to promote harmony amongst men, i.e. society. You see, Freemasonry strips away all of these different identities and looks at what we all have in common, not what makes us different. And this is one of the most significant parts of the symbolism of being properly prepared for your initiation. The ceremonies, the ancient usages, accepted customs, and landmarks of Freemasonry take the view that all men are equal, meeting on the level and parting on the square, and that individuals across every level of society are one and the same. There's no difference in Freemasonry in terms of the equality between a king and a pauper. They're on the same level. Freemasonry takes the view that a man is not esteemed of his worldly possessions or his station in life, and that all men enter the lodge on the same level, hence the term meeting on the level. And we're all properly prepared in the same way to enter through that portal in exactly the same state. So now that we have an understanding of the foundation of why the rule exists, but why are amicable discussions still prohibited? And couldn't they actually do more good than harm? Well, here's the thing. If we bring discussions of religion and politics into lodge, we suddenly then create the identities among the brethren. Oh, he's a Democrat, he's a Christian, he's a Muslim, he's a libertarian. These identities then divide us, not just by giving us difference of opinion, but by each person an external identity in a society that has, through the initiation, stripped us of all these external identities and whose purpose it is to unite us by what we have in common. And we can agree that in nearly any other circle, a healthy and amicable discussion of politics or religion can actually be beneficial. But what we know about human beings is we're not perfect. And our ceremonies tell us that we're not perfect as well, that we need to remove our superfluous knobs and excrescences from our character, i.e. the rude material, in order to become that better version of ourselves and in order to achieve perfection. Although, side note, perfection is never achieved, it's an ongoing process. But there's also the allegory that once we as apprentices have refined our character as much as we can, we're only preparing us for the hands of the more expert workman. And here is where I'll let you in on a little secret. You see, the term more expert workman has multiple and layered meanings. Funny, that in a peculiar system of morality veiled an allegory. But one of them is that there's always a more expert brother to refine you. But the ultimate expert and master craftsman, the only one who can make us perfect, is the great architect of the universe. But we can't achieve that perfection here on earth. Hence why the volume of the sacred law is one of the three great lights that directs us towards the great architect. We're directed towards who each of us believe through that volume of the sacred law is the creator so that he can provide perfection. Now that being said, if we are there to improve as a person while knowing that we are all fallible, why would we want to introduce either of the two very subjects that on the balance of probabilities will bring out the worst of each other? Why tempt fate when we as Masons are really here to bring out the best in each other? Well, the final and most important reason is there is a time and a place for those discussions of politics and religion. But when the goal and objectives and our efforts are directed on focus on building the metaphoric temple, we have to ask, is a Masonic lodge or really any meeting of Masons the right time or place to have these discussions? Of course it's not. It would be like wanting to discuss religion or politics during the middle of the World Cup final, or if you're American, the middle of the Super Bowl. Lodge meetings and any other meeting of Masons or any other gathering of Masons is supposed to be a sacred space where everything in the profane world can just be shut out. That's the point of closing the door and properly tiling the lodge. And just like on the sporting field, that once the whistle has gone for kickoff, the world stands still for 90 minutes or however long a gridiron match takes. And everything else doesn't matter. And then, when and where else can you go in this world to leave behind the world, to shut it out, to leave all your pain and suffering behind and just be present in a sacred and solemn space, even for a short period of time? You see, that's the beauty of Freemasonry, because at least when you go to lodge, you will always walk away on the winning team and boast in the trophies of your fraternity's accomplishments since time immemorial. The same can't be said for boasting on the accomplishments of your football team if you're a Tottenham fan like myself, although hopefully that will change.